So for our project base, we're using 12 by 12 medium weight chipboard. I have two sheets here that I glued together, so now that I have one sheet that's an 1/8 inch thick. And when I glued them together, I put one sheet with the curvature going this way and one sheet with the curvature coming this way, so that I have a very sturdy board now. I'm going to use black cardstock to wrap these edges, and I've cut, this is 12 inches by 12 inches, and my strips are only 12 inches long, so my corners may not be exactly perfect. So what I did was I just took my Copic marker and I blackened in a square and the edges, sorry, there's the edge, and the other side as well. So then if there's any gapping, we won't be able to see it. So these strips of black cardstock, 12 inches long, cut 1 1/8 wide, and then scored at 1/2, and then 5/8. And that, when we fold that, that gives us a nice 1/8 inch channel that will fit nicely around that edge and make a real clean finish there. So the way I like to do it is to put a piece of 1/8 inch score tape on that channel, attach that down first, and then put the two tabs down. So I think you can also see that I mitered, and when I did my mitering, I started from the edge of that channel, so you can see I've got a little flat place here and then the miters, so that reduces bulk at my corners. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap all 4 sides. So now I have all of the edging installed, and I'm ready to put some decorative paper on the top. Now I'm going to use this paper because I like these borders, but this interior piece isn't going to show. So I can save this and use it perhaps somewhere else. And I did that by, hopefully you can see that inside of this yellow border there's a little border of dots, and I left that little dot border all around. Also, you might notice that there's a couple of chunks up here out of it. That's where there's some dragon wings, and the project will cover these plots, so I kept the wings attached to the dragon. And then I've put score tape on the back, and most of these edges ended up being 1.5 inches wide. But down here at the front I've got a smaller strip, because when I go to put this on, I want to just attach one strip to begin with to make sure that I get it all straight before I remove all of that backing. So I'm also, before I start putting it down, just checking to make sure that it's the same size as my chipboard. You may need to remove a sliver from sides, and if so, go ahead and do that. And then I inked my edge with a red marker. So I'm going to go ahead and install this paper now. So this is how I'm installing it. I put a couple of pieces of low-tack tape up here on the top, and I've got it set so that all the edges are aligned properly. So now I can just pick this bottom edge up where I just have the skinny strip of score tape and remove that backing, and then let that fall nicely into place. And then I can remove my tape, pick this paper up, and go ahead and remove the remainder of the backing and put the piece down. So I've got that border all adhered now, and of course I gave it a good burnish. And there's one more piece that we want to install, and that's a piece of paper that will be the flooring for the courtyard. Now I have this oriented where the parts where the wings for the dragons were cut out is in the upper right. And I'm going to install my flooring down here. This is what I'm going to call my front. And I've cut this piece 6 inches wide by 3 1/4 inches deep. And we want to center that down here, and we'll butt it up right against the edge of this border print. So I've darkened this edge with a marker, so just in case any white would show. So now I'm going to get my centering ruler and get that centered there. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but you know, close. And once I've found center, I'll go ahead and mark 3 inches on either side, since my piece is 6 inches. And then I've prepped this with some score tape on the back, and I'll just remove the backing here. And I'm keeping my eye on my tick marks and kind of just pushing it up against that ridge of the other paper, and then putting that down, and I'll give that a good burnish as well. So there's our project base ready to go. Now we're ready to attach the turrets to the side of the building, and they're going to go up in this location. Now I've cut a couple of pieces of scrap cardstock to help us get the placement correct. The first one I'm going to use is 5/8 of an inch wide, and it's just, I don't know, this one is probably about 5 inches long. I just cut it from scrap. And I'll put some temporary adhesive on it. And then I'll snug it up right against the edge of the tall tower. Then the next template I cut is 1 5/8 inch wide by 2 3/4 tall, and the 1 5/8 is the width of this turret, and I'm just going to put some temporary adhesive on that as well, and make sure I hold that exactly flush with the top of the turret. So this gives us our height placement, so that when we put this on, we'll use that scrap to tell us where to align the turret with the back of the structure. So we have that for the height, and we have this 5/8 one for the placement left to right. So I'll go ahead and put some wet glue on this portion down here, and then put that in place using those two guides. I'm not going to rely strictly on those. I'm also going to get out my level and make sure it's plumb. And now I can put my second turret in. I'm going to use my 1 inch spacer next to the first turret. And then I've already added my spacer to the back of this turret to give me my height. So I'll go ahead and get that glued on. And again, I won't rely on this to be straight. I will use my level. You could also measure over from this straight line here to make sure that you've got it straight if you don't have a level. And I also put my level up here across the top to check that they were straight there. So I put some pressure on these for a few minutes, and then I'll allow it to set in this position for a little while to make sure that that glue is good and attached, because once we stand it up, of course, gravity would work against that. Now we're ready to attach the structure to the project base, And I have the base here in front of me. I have it oriented so that the front is facing away from me, because when we put the structure down, I'm going to use some components on the back to make sure I have it where I'd like to have it on the base. Now, on the left side here, the tall tower needs to come all the way to this edge over here. Make sure that you push it all the way to this edge, so that you'll have some space over here on the right. And then the back corner towers, see if I can hold this up so you can see it. There's a line of little dots here, and then there's a black line. And that black line is what I'm going to use for the back edges of the back corner towers. So this is my dry fit, and hopefully you can see here in this camera angle that I have the tall tower up right flush with the edge of the base, and then I'll slide it over here a little bit. And I've also zoomed in, so hopefully you can see what I mean by the black line and the dots. So I'm just going to keep it right on that black line, and that's where it will get positioned. So to attach the project, I'm just going to put wet glue on the bottom of the structure and then bring it straight down using that placement I just showed you. And then I'll just put some pressure on this and allow that to dry. Now we're ready to attach the annex and the second level tower to the structure. And you've probably noticed that up to this point I haven't put any of the tower roofs on, and that's to make sure that you can have a good view of what's going on. But in order to put and get the spacing right for these components, we do need to put the roof on the second level tower. So there's a glue space here, and it'll attach to there, and I'll just make sure that I get it level, and then also that the seam on the roof is matching up with the seam on the tower. So I'll get that roof installed. And now for a little dry fit. I'm going to put the annex and center it on this portion right here, or approximately center it. I've got this tilted. Of course you would do this straight, and then I want to see if there's enough room to put this tower in here. Now if there isn't, you'll just have to shift the annex a little bit to the right until it can. The roof of the second level tower is going to bump right up against the large round tower, and it'll probably fit tight up right against this railing here as well. And so once you see how you want it placed, go ahead and hold the annex in place, and then just put some glue on the bottom of the second level tower and put it in place there. Now look, watch your window placement so that you have that where you want. This seam should go back into the corner somewhere. And so then get the second corner tower glued in place, and once that's set up for a few minutes, go ahead and put some glue on the bottom of the annex here, and on the back. Don't come up close to this top, because you might have noticed that that roof comes up a little bit above the box there, and that's by design. So get those two pieces attached and let them cure. On the annex, I'm going to add 3 decorative elements that you can see here. They come from the Chipboard 2 collection. They're up here in this top right hand corner. So I cut them out and blackened their edges, and then I cut little squares of black cardstock that are 5/8 inch by 5/8 inch, and I have these prepared to go on the annex. I also added a template down here to the decorative element spacing. It says second level annex. And here it is cut out. You can see that I did not cut out any notches on this. I just cut it out as a long rectangle. So I've zoomed in here, so hopefully you can see this a little more easily. I put some temporary adhesive on the back of my template, and we'll just put it up here for a moment, just sitting there. And then I have two oranges and a green element here, so I'm going to put the green one in the middle, and I want to have it, just a hair above that point, maybe a 1/16 of an inch if that. And then I'm just kind of looking at where that comes to, and I'm going to take and find that line on my decorative paper and put my template down. So I'll do that. So I'm satisfied I have my template on there straight, so now I'll just put a little bit of wet glue on the back of each one of these, so then I'm able to move them a little if I need to, and put the 3 of these elements in place. And then before that glue has a chance to set up, remove the template and just double check to make sure that they are all in a row. Next we're going to add our pedestals, but before we do that, we wanted to add a couple of doors, and on the arched openings and window spacing, I've also added a template down here for the pedestal door spacing. I've added some temporary adhesive to my template, and then I'll put it centered on my pedestal. And then my doors, same as when we put on the back wall, I just cut off the bottom part of this, and I say it's bottom. Remember, I'm putting all my windows, so this highlight is towards the upper right. And this just gives you an idea of the height. What really you want to do, of course, is to line up the door with the bottom of the pedestal. And I'm just going to let it go right over this trim. So I'm going to install 2 doors on each of the pedestals. So here are the pedestals with the doors attached, and now we can go ahead and put them on the project. Now the one on the right will install even with this edge of the second level, and you can also use the line on your border print here to help you keep that straight as well. So I'll put glue on the back side here and then on the bottom, and then install that. Before we install the pedestal on the left, we want to do a little checking of some measurements. And the first thing I'm going to do is to take the right front corner tower and put it in place. Now, I'm going to take a little measurement here from the edge of the pedestal to the edge of the chipboard, and that's about 1 5/8 inches for me, and hopefully yours is right about that as well. And remember that these towers are about 2 inches wide, and that we cut this notch about 1/2 inch. We cut it 1/2 inch, so that when we put this tower in place, it should end up being just a little bit less than 1/8 of an inch from this right edge Let me slide this over a little bit so hopefully you can see that. There you can see there's just a little bit left on that edge there. And then when we fit this into the notch that we cut here in the pedestal, we want to take a little mental picture of how far back that is from the front. Or you can measure it too, but we're going to leave it in place. For me, it's a ½ inch. And so I'm going to leave that in place and slide this over so that you can see what's going on over on this side. And I'm going to start out by putting my pedestal in line flush with this wall here. And then I'll bring in my left tower and fit it into that notch there. I'll check to see if this front spacing is equal to the front spacing over here. And then I also want to see if this edge, let me slide this over just a little bit more, if this edge of the tower is going past the edge of the project base. Now for me, it's coming right to that edge. Now, if yours, in order to meet this same distance here, is hanging over that edge just a hair, what you can do is just cheat this pedestal back a little bit until your tower comes to the edge. So wherever that ends up, and hopefully you won't have to cheat it very much if at all, go ahead and make a note of where that is on the pattern paper and go ahead and glue that in just like we glued the other one. And then before that glue sets up, bring your tower in and make sure that everything is still where you want it to be. And then allow that to dry.